Welcome to another installment of Donning the Armor. This morning we will begin in 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 7. Well, actually, back up to verse 6. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, please bring the ephod here to me. And Abiathar brought the ephod to David. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. So in the compromise of David, he went, joined with the Philistines, traveled 3 days into Israelite territory, to join them, to come into their battle lines against the Israelites. But the Philistine princes don't trust him. Send him back. Now, there's another 3 days he now needs to travel back. We don't know how long he was actually at the place in Jezreel. So there's at least 6 days, at least, possibly more, possibly 7 or 8. Maybe even 2 weeks. We have no idea how long exactly they were gone from Ziklag. But in that time, the Amalekites come. They put the village to the flame. They burn it down. They take every man, woman, and child that's left. They take them all out because all the fighting men are with David. They're all taken. And now his people are so distressed over the loss of their families, they want to kill him. And David's now distressed because his men want to kill him. But even in his moment of compromise, he decides, I'm going to take strength in God. I'm going to seek the face of God. I'm going to find whatever way I can to make myself right before God. So he goes to Abiathar, the only priest of Ahimelech who actually survives the slaughter of Saul. He survived with the ephod, with the Urim and Thummim. And he says, bring the ephod here so that we can inquire of the Lord. He says, shall I pursue this troop? Everybody's got to be thinking, if there's anybody of his men surrounding him, around him at all, and David says, should I pursue this troop? They have to be thinking, yes, you have to right now pursue this troop. I want my family back, David. Are you stupid? Yes, you need to go pursue these people. But that's not how David operates. David wants the word straight from the Lord. He said, my strength is in the Lord. I want to hear directly from him. I want to hear what the Lord has to say. So the Lord answered, pursue them, and you will without fail recover all. Without fail, you'll recover all. The Amalekites, for my estimation, are a judgment upon the compromise of David. The fact that they didn't slaughter every man, woman, and child in the village as David had to the Amalekite villages, and that David has a chance to overtake them, pursue them, and recover all without fail, is grace being poured out upon David, even in his compromised state, in absolute act of grace and love by God. An absolute act of love and grace. So David went, he and his 600 men who were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those stayed who were left behind. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, who were so weary that they could not cross the brook Besor. So, as oddly worded as the New King James has that, David, his whole 600 men army, they have no village. It was burned down. They're going. They're just marched 3 days And now they're still going. We're not resting. We are pursuing now. We're going to take back our families now from these Amalekites. They come to the brook Bezor, and there are 200 people who just simply cannot make it anymore. They simply cannot pursue. They don't have the physical capacity to go any further. So David leaves them there. There's no speaking of condemnation. He just leaves them there. Then they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David, and they gave him bread and he ate. And they let him drink water, and they gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. So when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" So now they're coming. They come across this Egyptian broken down in a field, starving, dehydrated, near death. And they give him some food. They give him some water. They allow him to come back and be nourished. And David says, "Where do you belong? Where do you come from? Why are you out here all along like this?" And he said, "I am a young man of Egypt, servant of an Amalekite, and my master left me. And my master left me behind because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion of the southern area of the Chetherites in the territory which belongs to Judah, and of the southern area of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire." And David said to him, "Can you take me down to this troop?" So he's saying, look, I'm a young man. I'm an Egyptian. I'm a servant. I'm a slave of an Amalekite. And because I fell sick and I couldn't keep up as they were moving, my master he didn't care about me. He left me behind to die. I mean, that is the truth. There was no concern. He left him there to die, to perish. He's saying, we made an invasion of the southern area of Judah, this southern area of Caleb, all these areas. We burned Ziklag with fire, and I don't think this even processed into him that Ziklag is David's area, that was his city, that these are his people. He's sickly, he's exhausted, he's tired, he's starved. And he's just saying, look, these are the things we did. I was left for dead after all these things happened. David said to him, "Can you take me down to this troop? Can you take me down? These people that left you for dead, can you lead me there? Can you lead me to them?" So he said, "Swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this troop. Swear to me by God, by your God, that you will neither kill to me or deliver me into the hands of my master. So don't kill me and don't give me back, because I don't want to be a slave to that person anymore either. If you agree to these conditions, I'll take you down to where they are. I know where they were headed. I'll take you there." And when they had brought him down, or when he had brought him down, there they were, spread out over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Because remember, the Ziklag is in Philistine territory. They didn't just attack the people of Judah, the people of the Israelites. They attacked the land of the Philistines as well. So these Amalekites they've taken a lot, and they're happy. They're eating, they're dancing, they're drinking. They have no care in the world. They're victorious. They've had these great victories set before them. Then David attacked them. From twilight until the evening of the next day, not a man of them escaped except 400 young men who rode on the camels and fled. Not a care in the world. Not a care in the world, which means they had set up not a watch. They didn't pay attention. They had no concern over who was coming after them, who might be coming for them. They allowed their victories to turn into pride and complacency. And when you sit and become complacent in your victories, failures are soon to follow. Pride comes before a fall, and a haughty look before destruction. That's what we're told in Proverbs, written by the son of David. And here they are, dancing and drinking and partying in their pride. Haughty before the hand of justice that was about to be stretched out before them. And now comes their fall and their destruction. And he attacked them from twilight until evening the next day. He is attacking them for hours. Twilight could either be the going down of the sun or kind of the coming up of the sun by the way it was written in Judaism. So it could be anywhere between almost 24 hours to 12 hours they are doing battle. So as they're doing this, they're fighting, they're battling, they're not even at their best, but they're still outnumbered. Because 400 young men escape on camels and flee. David only has 400 men because 200 are left behind at Brook Bezor. 12 to 24 hours of pitched combat with troops who are absolutely exhausted, but are fighting for a cause. Fighting to recover their children. Fighting to recover their families. You have these people who are ill prepared for the battle coming their way against people who were dead set on recovering what they had taken. Not because they took what they possessed, but because they took whom they loved. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. And nothing of theirs was lacking, neither small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything which they had taken from them. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and herds they had driven before those other livestock, and said, "This is David's spoil." So here you have all these things. David, they send these 400 fleeing, they slaughter everyone else. They recover everything which had been taken from them, including the flocks, the herds, all these other livestock and spoils that were brought forth from these other areas of the Philistines, of Judah, of the area of Caleb. They brought all these people back. All these things are now in the hands of David. Now David came to the 200 men who had been so weary that they could not follow David, whom they also had made to stay at the brook Bezor. So they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And when David came near the people, he greeted them. So here you have these people who were exhausted and broken and didn't even have enough power to go forth and save their own families. That's how little strength they had left. They come out to meet David and to meet the 400 returning heroes. And David greets them. But then all the wicked and worthless men, that means morally corrupt people, not worthless, because they were obviously worth a lot in battle, of those who went with David answered and said, "Because they did not go with us, we'll not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except for every man's wife and children." that they may lead them away and depart. So here are these other group of people coming back with David, saying, you know, they didn't have any part of the battle. They didn't risk their lives. They stayed back here. So nothing should be shared with them. Give them back their wife and their children and let them depart from us. They don't deserve to be a part of our band. We had to go. We had to pursue. We had to put our lives on the line. They did none of that. So let them be sent away while we share in the spoil of victory. But David said, my brethren, you shall not do so with what the Lord has given us, who has preserved us and delivered into our hand the troop that came against us. David says, you're not going to do that with what the Lord has given us. You're going to sit back and say, they did nothing. We did everything. We chased that troop down of Amalekites. We prevailed. We persevered. We gained this spoil. We deserve it. And David says, No. The Lord has preserved us. The Lord brought us to that troop. The Lord has given us this spoil. The Lord has returned our family. You're not going to divide up and send people away based on what you think you did when it was the Lord who did it. You're traveling from Ziklag, having to leave 200 men behind at the brook Bezor. And you go forth to hunt down these Amalekites that could be anywhere. But who do you come across? A slave near death who was left behind to die. The troop of Amalekites was delivered into our hand. That servant didn't just happen to be there. That wasn't a coincidence. That was the providence of the Lord. Coincidence is what the unbelieving world calls the providence in the providential hand of the Lord in our lives. The Lord moves things in our lives and tries to nudge us in position. He gave us free will. We can deny it. We can head off in whatever way we want. And we will be the worse for it. But the Lord places people in our lives to try to keep us on track through His providential hand, through His sovereign will. Now, there are Calvinists who say, well, how can you, if God is so sovereign, how come you think your free will can trump His sovereign will? It's because my free will is a part of His sovereign will. See, being a father myself, I know I can impose my will on my children, especially when they're young. You can impose your will on your children in any way you wish. But it's my sovereign will as their father figure, my sovereignty over my household, that I allow them to make their own decisions, for better or worse. And they will either incur my wrath, the punishment they'll have at my hands for doing wrong, or they'll receive my praise and my blessings for doing right. That doesn't make me God or the God of my family or some bizarre cultish thing. But as a father, I understand what God the Father does for us. And our free will is a part of His sovereign will for our lives. So He will nudge us and try to lead us to what is best, but allows us to make our own mistakes. He allows us to do as we wish because He wishes for us to love Him. He doesn't need us to love Him. He wishes for us to love Him because He loves us. Just as a father, I wish for my children to love me. Only I'm a flawed human, and I'd go as far as to say I need my children to love me. But that's my fault. It's a part of my fallen nature, my failure as a human being, as a part of my sinfulness, that I need the affirmation of other people. Because that's just human nature. You always wish to have affirmation of people. But I wish for my children to love me back. But they may or may not. They may grow up. My children are young. My children may grow up. I know many people who are good, godly people whose children, when they get to a certain age, they want no part of anything their parents had ever taught them. They view their parents as backwards and decrepit and ugly people morally because of their following of Christ. That's their will. That's their free will. They get to make that choice. And we don't have to like it. And in some cases, they need to be put outside of us because of how toxic they've become to us. And that's the same way God identifies with us as our Father. Just that majestic image of a father leading us, trying to push us in the right direction, as hard-headed as we are to listen to him and understand his wisdom and his knowledge for our good. David saying, no, you're not going to send these people out because they couldn't help. Not that they didn't desire to, but they couldn't physically help. Realistically, if we look at this, if these 200 had been forced to go the rest of the way and do battle, a lot of them probably die in this fight. And now their wives are widows and their children orphans. But God has preserved them. God has delivered them. God has provided for them and has blessed them in abundance. For who will heed you in this matter? But as his part is who goes down to battle, so shall his part be who stays by the supplies. They shall share alike. And this is an incredibly wise statement for David, and maybe something that he really learned as a part of what he just did in his compromise with the Philistines. 600 mighty men, they all went with Achish and left Ziklag defenseless. So now he's telling his people, for who will heed you in this matter? But as his part is who goes down to the battle, so shall his part be who stays with the supplies. They shall share alike. The people who stay back to defend the homeland will have done just as important a part of the battle as the people who go to fight. We have had a lot of wars in my lifetime, but it's really not been since World War II that I think this country really understood what a war was. And there's been a lot of dissension by a lot of, to be honest with you, communists. Vietnam is a war we won, but lost because we abandoned it, because communists at home had taught their college students to hate the U.S. government and have propagandized them against winning a war when we're facing down vile evil in the world. So we abandon Vietnam. Every time the U.S. has had a chance to win an actual war in my lifetime, we've abandoned it because people are propagandized by malcontents in our own country to be against the good our country's doing and to lionize the evil in the other country. We see it today with Israel. Israel defending itself against legitimate terrorist organizations and people marching in the streets waving terrorist flags condemning Israel. Why? Because that's how they've been propagandized. And they've fallen for it. But during World War II, when we were sending so many young men off to fight and die in Europe and in the Pacific Theater, there were old men here. There were women joining the workforce. There were people doing their part to make sure that those young men who went to war had a home to come back to. And that is something that David is laying out here, that same idea of the people who stay home to protect the homeland, to protect the homestead, are doing a part that you're not understanding. You might be risking your life in battle, but they're carrying the lion's share of the responsibility of keeping this homestead going so that when you return from battle, you have something to return to. Because they had just gone off to the Philistines, to the valley of Jezreel to do battle. They got sent back before they did the battle. But when they got sent back, because they had left no one home with the supplies in the homestead to protect it, they had nothing to come home to. So it was from that day forward, he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day, that there is honor in being the one who stays behind. Honor in the one who stays behind to protect the homeland. Now when David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the spoil to the elders of Judah, to his friends, saying, "Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord." To those who were in Bethel, those who were in Ramoth of the south, those who were in Jatir, those who were in Aor, those who were in Siphmoth, those who were in Eshtemoa, those who were in Rachel, those who were in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, those who were in the cities of the Kenites, those who were in Hormah, those who were in Chorashan, those who were in Atak, those who were in Hebron, and all the places where David himself and his men were accustomed to rove. So David sends all this spoil, some of the spoil, but probably a good amount considering how much he spread it out to the elders of Judah. Here's a present for you. You guys were raided by these Amalekites. We're going to return some of this livestock to you. To all these people in all these areas where David was allowed to find freedom as he avoided Saul, as he left from the persecution of Saul. David understanding where his allies were, who his allies were, who had honored him, and showing that once again, it is the Lord who he fights for, and the children of the Lord who he seeks to protect. A man after God's own heart. A king who is looking to do good by God and for the people of God. The king the people deserved. The king the people should have always wished to have, a person who sought God in the same vein as the judges. Not like Saul, who was in the vein of the pagan kings around them that they wished to have and preside over them. Do things to honor God and help support those who also stand in honoring God. We are not to forsake the gathering together of the brethren, to come together as a church body, but we're also to be loving to one another as brothers and sisters in Christ. David is doing this, being loving to those who love God as well. I know my pace has slowed down so much since I've hit 1 Samuel. In an effort, it was to keep some of these videos shorter, even though it's debatable how much shorter they became. But it's because there's so much in the life of David that we are to emulate and learn from. And it's worth slowing down to look at these things. To look at the life of a man that we should wish to emulate in his heart, not in deed, not in sin, but in heart for God. There's so many lessons to take from the book of 1 Samuel. And this is just yet another. To don't hold back. When you have abundance of provisions from the Lord, don't hold back in sharing it with those who also sit in communion with God. Spread the spoil out. Bless those who have also been a blessing to you. Not because you want to do right by them in their eyes, but because you want to be righteous in the eyes of the one who gave himself for you. The only one we should truly look to be righteous in the eyes of God. We want to love other members in the bride of Christ, not so they love us back, but because Christ loves them as much as he loves us. He blessed us. Now let us bless them. Not in the name of us, but in the name of him. If you have the opportunity to be a blessing in the life of someone else, be a blessing in their life as a way to honor him in all things that we do. So that's where we shall end it for this morning. I hope this was a blessing for you. I hope it's fruitful for you. I hope to see you back again next time. But until then, be blessed.